So, Megan, how are you doing? Good?
I'm good. How are you, Jesus?
Very good. Really a pleasure to have you here so that you can tell us a bit about your experience, your journey in data science, so that we can or learn from you. So,
Yeah,
where are you from, by the way?
I'm in the Washington, D.C. area.
Nice. Yeah, we have here some people all over the world, from India, from Texas as well. So
Amazing.
good. So, first question. What's your background? What has brought you to work in data science right now? Because you're working for a company called Narrator, right?
Yep, that's right. My background is actually in finance. I went to school for finance and started my adult career as a financial analyst. And I really thought that that was the field I was going to spend the rest of my life in, probably because that was all I had ever known, since that was what I studied. That was what I did all my internships in. But 2 years into that career field, I was very burnt out and realized I never really liked it in the first place. And it was really hard to continue showing up every day for that when you don't care about what you do. And so had to do a really introspective process and ask myself what exactly it was I did want to do. And I had thought back to some college courses I had taken in IT and data analytics. And I had enjoyed them at the time, but never really paid attention to those classes because I thought I was going into finance and I would not ever need them, but I did enjoy them. And so at the point where I was at a crossroads of being like, should I continue down this path where I have experience, or should I start all over and try to find a career that actually makes me happy? And I chose the latter and decided to go to some kind of field. Like I wanted to find some kind of job where I could use those analytics classes that I took. And so that's how I ended up doing like a 4-month transition where I was interviewing nonstop and upskilling and teaching myself a lot of the concepts to be able to eventually become an analytics consultant after that was my first data role, and that was where I learned a lot of everything I knew that I know now, and used that as a stepping stone to become a data scientist about 10 months later, where I came to Narrator.
So when you realized that you didn't like finance that much and you wanted to transition, were you looking for a job at the same time?
Yeah.
When you realized, okay, yeah, because many people also are working actually, and they want to transition into data science because it's very cool to work on many fields because data is related to any field in the world.
Right.
So how do you, which process did you went through? So you were taking courses at the same time you were going to the interviews. Did you, in the interviews, did they require you to have a background in data science?
Yeah, so at the time I wasn't interviewing for data science roles. I was interviewing for entry-level like data analytics roles, and a lot of them happened to be at consulting firms. And that was because my first job as a financial analyst, I was working at a Big Four consulting firm. Okay. And so that allowed me to get my foot in the door at a lot of other consulting firms, where I would be a consultant at the end of the day, but I was doing data analytics on top. And that was, I think, one way that my transition ended up being successful, because I wasn't trying to make that switch from being a financial analyst at a consulting firm to a data scientist at a tech company from the start, right? Like that's a huge jump. What I was doing was finding that intermediate stepping stone, which was doing data analytics at another consulting firm. And that's ultimately how I got that first job in data. And then from there, using my data skills to now being a data scientist at a tech startup.
Okay, so I guess that the big four was Ernst and Young, right?
Yep, that's right.
And then the one that was your first job as more related to data science was here, right?
Yep.
And which differences in the daily job that you had to do you found?
Like between those two?
Yeah.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I was an analyst at both. And so I was the one who was owning projects, crunching the numbers, and doing the daily work with like either financial models or data models. And so ultimately, though, that work that I was doing would be delivered to clients because we're consultants, we're external consultants. And those parallels made it pretty easy for me to make that transition, because it wasn't like, because I was still a consultant, I was still very much doing a lot of the same things and serving the same types of customers. Whereas now at Narrator, I'm not serving like clients, I'm serving customers who are using our product. And so that's one of the biggest changes that I've had to go through in like my recent job switch, which is like, I'm no longer an external consultant. I am contributing to a product. And that has been the biggest change. But referring to that first transition from going to EY to Ankara, I was still within the consulting lateral, and I did it. And that kind of parallel allowed me to have an easier transition.
Good. And which tools did you use, for example, in Y in Ernst & Young? Like the
Excel.
or...
It was Excel.
And
that's it.
in the other company as well, in Ankara?
At Ankara, that was where I first got exposure to SQL, Python, Tableau, Power BI, R, and a bunch of other tools. And I'm so thankful for that experience, because I had that foundation laid there before I came to Narrator.
Yeah, because many people are used to work in the Excel. When I started at the beginning, it was Excel all the time. So when you want to work in Python, data science, etc., the first steps are a bit tricky, because you're afraid of something new.
Yeah.
How was that experience for you? I mean, were you more flexible to get into Python, data science, or did you have some barriers to get inside?
So I knew what tools I wanted to become proficient at. And I was so lucky at Ankara. We were working in a bunch of different projects, and each project like focused on use different tools, but I really got exposure to all of the tools that I wanted to. And the best part was everybody else around me wanted to learn it too. And so our team had developed an internal training program where in the beginning, when I was onboarded, I would spend a week learning one tool, a week learning another tool, a week learning yet another tool. And then on top of that, we had data camp subscriptions. So everybody was expected to stay on top of that learning. It wasn't just a one-time onboarding learning experience. It was everybody else was also expected to stay on top of these tools. And that kind of continuous learning attitude really stuck with me even to today. So yeah, that was really how the concepts there stuck with me. Definitely there were some struggles in picking up certain tools, but I think also the fact that I wasn't just learning through courses, I was actually applying them in real world projects, really helped it stick. Yeah,
I think that's a pretty cool way to get started, because when you work with Python daily, you have to practice it. So it's no best way to learn, because I see many people who have really good certifications from previous jobs, and they believe they need to get into a course to transition into a data science role. But even though so, I have seen also people who get into masters, they get the title, and then later in the job, they retrain them as well. you know?
Yes. Yeah.
It's like you could shortcut in a way the steps so that you can get in a work related to data science and start learning in the job, which is the pretty cool way. So it's pretty good to have that experience of you, because I think that many people will take it into account.
Yeah.
Good. So then why did you decide to move to another company from Ancora to Narrator?
Yeah, I moved there because my current manager reached out to me, and she found one of my viral LinkedIn posts, and we talked, and then one conversation led to another, and next thing you know, I had an offer from them. So yeah, at the time when I got the offer, I was not like fully looking to move out of my previous company. I still very much enjoyed it there. But then got this opportunity, and I was like, this could be an amazing learning experience, and I didn't want to let it pass me by. And so it was an awesome decision that I made, and I haven't turned back since.
So you got the job because of a LinkedIn post that got into another conversation. Wow.
Yeah, that's actually how I ended up becoming a LinkedIn learning instructor as well, like from the same post. So.
And when did you decide to make your work public in LinkedIn, social media?
I started when I started posting to LinkedIn consistently when I started at Ancora.
Okay.
That was because it was my first data role, and I was so excited about it. I wanted to start sharing my learnings. And also another reason is because back when I was at EY and I was job searching, I didn't want anybody to know that I was job searching. So I was just one of those silent creepers on LinkedIn. And then once I got my new job, I was like, okay, now I can turn over and start over and just post whatever and whenever I want. And it was helpful because like, since I had been posting from the beginning of my time at Ancora, when I started looking for jobs, I didn't have to be like super secretive about being on LinkedIn like I was previously, because I was already on LinkedIn.
I see this post that you put now. Of course, now back then wasn't that nice as they are now, because they are really worked. They are
yeah, I love making these. They take a lot of work, but they actually like are some of my most popular posts. So
yeah. And those first posts, which topic did you cover in them? Because I think that many people as well could promote what they are learning in the LinkedIn so that they can get attraction to future jobs, etc. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I post SQL tips, and more like advanced SQL tips, like posting functions that you may not have known about that you can use in certain warehouses. So but I do think that if you want to demonstrate your technical skills, doing things like this, sharing your code and putting yourself out there is super helpful. That's not why I do it. I do it because because I get a lot of like eyeballs on these posts for some reason. So that's why I do them. But if you're somebody just starting out, I think sharing your learning is so important.
Yeah. And also, do you think that people need to share really good code? Because I see that some newbies may be a bit afraid of sharing their work and saying it's not good enough, blah, blah. What do you think on that?
Yeah, your code is never going to be like good enough or perfect, or I think good enough is good enough. It's never going to be perfect. And as long as you kind of go in with the attitude that, hey, I'm going to be sharing my learning, and so that means I have to up the quality of my code, I think that's a healthy motivator. But then you shouldn't let the fear of criticism stop you from doing it in the first place. So it's kind of like putting some pressure on yourself to make your code as good as you can, but just understand that there will never be a state where you're like, your code is perfect.
Yeah. And also, when you were publishing your code, did you receive feedback that you could take into account to progress, to learn more?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I had posted some actual Python projects before in the past, and some people definitely offered very great feedback on like, you know, do this to make your code a little bit more readable, or like try this package, or you know, like very great best practice suggestions. And it was great because when I was posting those Python projects, it was earlier on, and I very much valued having outsiders look at my code, because at the time I was like, I could be doing this completely wrong. Like I was just learning it myself. And I was like, what if my notebooks are like actually terrible looking? And so I really valued having outsider perspective. And then for this kind of code, for like SQL code, it's not really like feedback I get. It's like people who are like, oh, I've tried this before, or have you tried like this function instead? And I actually get some really good ideas for future posts to make from those comments.
Yeah, because I think in SQL it has to do a lot of with the efficiency of the transactions, because in the cloud they may be really costly, etc. Right?
Yeah, true.
Good. So once you get into narrator, which type of projects were you involved? Because I have researched the website. What do you do in narrator concretely?
Yeah, I am working to support customers who use our product. And also I use Narrator itself to build out our internal reporting. So my job is broken up into pretty much like two buckets, both internal, using Narrator for ourselves, and then external, helping customers use Narrator. And that the latter bucket, where I'm helping others use it, is actually very similar to like my consulting days, where I am helping external customers make better use of their data. And that has been like the, you know, when I was talking about my transition from EY to Ankara, how I had like some sort of parallel or transferable skill that made my transition easier, right? For me here, that transferable skill is working with customers and having that consulting mindset. That has been the parallel that I have, or like the common thing that I've had with my prior position as an analytics consultant, that sort of makes it feel like it's still a very familiar role for me. And supporting customers, being able to communicate with them well and in a timely manner is something that I'm very much used to. And so that part of the job, it's not like, I wouldn't say it's like my favorite, because I came to this job thinking that as a data scientist, I would just be doing heads down code all day, but that absolutely is not true.
It's more communicating with the people.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not coding all day. Like I would say that's maybe like 10% of my job, honestly. But I'm saying that part of communicating externally with customers is something I'm very familiar with. And it's a large part of what I do. And so the other part, which is using Narrator itself to develop our own internal reporting, and also to build out product offerings within Narrator. That's the part I very much enjoy. We have to build out like regularly occurring reports that we deliver to our investors, and build out board decks and things like that. And all the data that goes into those reports come from Narrator. And I'm in charge of those reporting pipelines to make sure that like everything is accurate and clean in time for important deliverables to our stakeholders. And then also on the front of building out our product offerings, that's where things are a little bit like, I'm a lot less familiar with it, which is like building things from scratch. Currently, I'm working on building out what is called narratives. And narratives are the Narrator way of saying of like these automated reports that you can build very easily from within Narrator. Those narratives are something that I've been working on since I've come to the company, and it's still a very new offering from Narrator. And currently I'm working on thinking strategically about how we can get more customers to adopt this offering, because not all of our customers use it yet. The core of our product is building data sets and plots from data that is pulled into Narrator. And so
from the customers.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Which type of data industries do you have customers from?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Sorry. Which industries do you have your customers? In which industry?
Oh, yeah. We have a lot of e-commerce companies. We have like e-commerce, random, like, a lot of SaaS companies and a couple of enterprise companies, but a lot of them are technology focused startups who have a lot of data and they need to use that data to deliver a product. Like we have one customer who is a dating website just for females. We have one who is like a cooking recipe website where they where it's like, I don't know, a recipe app that suggests recipes for you. So we have a wide variety of customers.
They generate the data of the customer interaction, I don't know, and then you analyze the data, put it into reports, dashboards, etc.
Yeah, so Narrator sits on top of our customers' data warehouses, and we're not the one analyzing it. It's the customer themselves, often a data analyst who uses Narrator, the tool, to analyze their own data.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. And also for you, do you need to talk with the customer to say, hey, you should look at this type of the data because it's giving you something interesting, etc.?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of hand-holding on our end, especially in the beginning when customers first start, to suggest to them the best practice for how to build out their data models, or how to build out their analyses, or what should they show in the plot to like make it less messy. There's a lot of best practice suggestions on our end to make sure that they are using the tool as efficiently as possible. And that's a big part of my job too, communicating with customers to like help them help themselves.
Yeah, that's also a thing, because it's not the same working as a consultant where you're touching many projects for different kinds than working for the same company in the same project, type of project. I don't know, for example, if you're working in energy and you're all the time analyzing the prices of the energy market, it's all the time the same thing. So it's not the same than being consultant that you're working in many projects in energy, in finance, in e-commerce, for example. Right. And how do you see that perspective of people who want to get into the field? Would you advise at the beginning to take a job which is related to just one field, or work more as a consultant where you can work in many projects of different kinds? What would you advise?
I would definitely suggest going the route of being a consultant first, especially if you are earlier on in your career. I'm not sure if your audience is skewed more towards like early career folks, mid-career, or later. My suggestion for early career people is to start in consulting, where you are thrown into a lot of different projects, a lot of different industries, and you have to learn and pick up a lot of different things and tools and industries and fields at the same time. It is a lot of it. For that reason, it's very hectic. And it's why I kind of got burnt out from consulting at the end of the day. But in the beginning, it was a great learning process because you get exposure to such a variety of projects.
And also, I guess that you see the patterns in the sense that you see what is the same all the time. Like, for example, you can apply some techniques in energy that are transferable to finance or e-commerce, etc.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and identifying those similarities is ultimately like how you end up distinguishing yourself. It's how, if you can identify like things that you have worked on before that can relate to a future role that you want to get into. It's just that practice of identifying similarities and transferable skills is so important. And it's completely how I got to where I am today, by taking those small intermediate steps and pitching myself to recruiters and being like, hey, I might not have like all of the requirements that you have, but I do have these similar skills, and really knowing how to craft my story to emphasize the strengths that I have, as opposed to the skills that I don't have. So that's sort of similar to what you were asking, but yeah, even in consulting, you have to do that kind of similarity identification exercise a lot too.
Yeah. That's also a good thing that you said, because I see many people who want to apply to jobs and they see a huge list of requirements, and they, just because they see some 2 or 3 skills that they don't fulfill, they say, okay, I won't be bothered, they won't pick me up, let's find another one. So it's very good that you highlight that it's okay not to have them, you have others that you can relate there. How did you relate? Like, which advice would you give to the people to relate previous skills to the new ones in the job they are applying?
Yeah, one thing that you can definitely do is take your resume and take a job description of a role that is what you think is ideal for yourself, put them up side by side and start to compare the keywords in the job description versus what you have in yours. And the more you do that, like the more different job descriptions you have up that you compare to your resume side by side, the more you're going to be able to craft your resume to like incorporate those keywords, but also like for your own understanding, you'll understand what are the skills out there that employers are looking for nowadays. That exercise is really helpful and has allowed me to iteratively improve on my resume and also gain an understanding of what exactly are the skills out there that are hot right now in the job market.
Yeah, because I see also many people that get into a master's, a course, because they think they know what the market is requiring, instead of starting the job search at the end in a way and then going backwards. Like, you go to see the job offer, you see the skills, and then you take that feedback to take courses specifically on acquiring those skills. So that's pretty good.
That's a very efficient way of doing it.
Which errors do you see on people who are trying to get into data science that they, as beginners, and we all do, commit?
I think that getting trapped in the endless cycle of courses is one mistake that I definitely made, just because taking courses is a very comfortable route, but actually applying what you learn in the courses to projects and getting your hands dirty with real world data, and then like actually putting yourself out there and displaying your learnings on like LinkedIn or GitHub or Tableau Public or whatever, that's the scary part. Whereas taking courses and endlessly clicking through modules and then going to the next course, the next course, the next course, like that's safe. That's very like, I can do that. Just like sit there and click. And I definitely thought that too. Like I thought that finishing a course would be like an actual accomplishment, but that's pretty much like pretty soon I realized I wasn't actually learning anything from doing that. And then I would stop finishing courses and then I'd be like, wait, so I'm actually learning nothing. Like I'm not actually accomplishing anything. And it wasn't until I would apply those skills to projects and then put myself out there that I'm like, oh, like now I actually know the concepts. Now I actually know how these skills will look if I encounter them in the real world.
Yeah, because in the Ancora job, I guess, that where you started to work with Python, etc., you found that the courses that you took wasn't that useful for you because you weren't applying the concepts. You were just watching the videos and that's on. You thought that you already knew, but then you got to the job and then you tried to work the code, but you couldn't, I guess, or...
Yeah, I barely remembered anything from clicking through those data camp courses because it's like, yeah, they have fun exercises for you, but you're learning those like the skills like pandas or like, you know, NumPy. You're learning it in such a vacuum. Like you're not like on the screen, when I was typing in my answers and stuff, I think I remember I was resorting to memorization for a lot of them. I was like, I don't actually know this. Like, I just want to get to the next video. Like, I just want to pass this one exercise. But I never really thought about like, why am I doing this? Like, why do I need this one input? Until I had to actually do it in projects. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, this is very different from how I learned it in the module. But I guess learning it in the first place from courses was helpful because I was like, okay, at least like let me take down notes. And so when I started to encounter some of the concepts in actual projects, I was like, oh, let me look back to my notes. And then I was like, okay, now I know like what it will look like in the real world.
Yeah. So if you were to start from the beginning right now, how would you do it?
I would do what you said about working backwards. Talk to people who are in the field and start to understand the skills that are actually most valuable. Getting that firsthand account from somebody who is doing the job every day is so invaluable. And then you can start to understand, okay, I need to learn XYZ skills. How do I work backward from that? And maybe you can ask that same person, be like, how did you start? Like, what were your steps leading up to where you are now? And that way you have an informed roadmap, as opposed to how I did it. And I think so many people do it is just like, oh, let me start from like the coolest concepts and like go from there. No, you have to like get a broad understanding of what are like the fundamentals that you need and work backward from there to get to where you are now. Yeah. And then that way you actually have a vision of what the path forward looks like, as opposed to just blindly learning all the cool things.
Totally. Because also I see like people see this artificial intelligence, which is really cool, and they want to get started in neural networks from the beginning without understanding Python or a linear regression. And I say, wow, I mean, impossible.
See, like I never did that. I was never that outrageous because I was like, that stuff is way over my head. Like there is no possible way I could just skip 25 steps and get there. Yeah. And if you are one of those people who does not have a solid understanding of like, you know, calculus, linear algebra, statistics before you get there, like you're doing it completely wrong, because you can't, it just does not work that way.
Yeah. Also for me, what you mentioned about knowing these basics, maths, algebra, etc. When I studied in the uni, they were helpful, but the exercises weren't that specifically related to statistics or data science. They were more related to just making linear calculations that, okay, you need to learn it to later apply it in the computer. But then as you advance on Python, data science, machine learning, etc., you find out that most of the calculus is done in the backwards of the computer. Like you don't need to do it.
Yeah, but it's still so helpful to know. Like I think, I took community college courses in calculus and linear algebra just last year. And I was like, oh, this is actually super cool. Like once I knew that this had applications in the field that I wanted to be studying. But yeah, when I was learning it as an undergrad student, I was like, this is so pointless. Like, when will I ever learn this? Computers do this for you. Yeah. But now, like being in the field and actually seeing the applications, I was like, oh, okay, it's pretty helpful to know at least generally what's happening under the hood.
Totally. The bad thing is that, for example, in my case, when I see the students that they put so complex exercises of calculus that some people drop the subjects and then they finish at the end. And that's a bit because they don't feel it's related to what they want to learn, etc. But it's also up to everyone to research on their own. Hey, how is this related to artificial intelligence, neural networks, etc.?
Yeah, identifying the applicability of any skill that you're learning, or like, you know, whether you're doing that, whether you're learning things from college or from a course, like just having an understanding of why you're doing things and what this stuff looks like when you're actually in the real world is so important. And when I was a student in undergrad, I never did that. And so that's why I was a bad student. Like I did not care about what I did in college because I couldn't see why we were learning things. So yeah.
Also, one question that I was about to ask before.
Yep.
As you have worked with many companies from different fields, etc., and also in companies dedicated to data science, how is the interaction between business to business when the other business doesn't have a literature person in data?
Yeah, that is such a good question. We work with, I currently work with a pretty even mix of customers who are data literate versus those who are not. And it's an interesting experience when you have to work with somebody who is bringing in narrator as like a substitute for not having good data practices or any data person in their company. And it's like, oh man, like you guys have a long way to go. And that's when our job gets a little bit hairier because we have to teach them not only how to use our product, but like what are the best ways to like do any kind of data analysis or build anything off of data. And for those customers, like it's a lot of handholding and also a lot of like on our part, we have to kind of interpret their asks and do that exercise of bridging the gap between what they have right now versus what they want. And we on the data team have to make a lot of educated guesses as to like what it is that they actually want versus what they say they want. And that exercise surprisingly takes up a lot of my role when I'm working with customers, and I didn't expect it to. Like I never understood like really how to translate business needs, which is what a customer says they want, versus what it translates to in data, which is what they will actually want. And so it's a lot of us doing a lot of educated guesses on, you know, the customer says they want this now, but we know that once they see the data, they're going to think XYZ. And so we have to do the preventative things beforehand to like make sure that, you know, they interpret it correctly, that they can deliver it to their stakeholders correctly. And so that business to data translation process is something I've learned a lot about in this job, because we work with customers who don't know how to do it themselves.
Yeah, and you see that they are willing to hire people who are related to data, who have more data literacy, or they think that having a person in data is not that helpful in a way because their main business is another one.
Yeah, some companies come to Narrator and be like, yeah, we don't plan on hiring a data analyst, so we're just going to hire Narrator and like hope that somebody will know how to use this tool, and so we don't need to hire a data person. Other people are like, oh yeah, we're bringing in Narrator for now. We plan on hiring our first data analyst or a data person or a head of data, but we need Narrator now because it's cheaper than hiring a full like data person. And then yet there are other customers who are actually very data mature, and they recognize the value of using Narrator to supplement their work, Those are our like best case scenarios. And we have the full gamut of like, from people who have no data people and don't plan on having data people to people who understand that having data literacy and data professionals in the organization, like very intertwined in all parts of the business, is so critical. And that's what we want, but we don't always get that.
Yeah, that's difficult because when we work on the field, we see clearly that knowing about the data really provides a value to know where to make the decisions, where are the problems. But it's strange how people who have been working in the same processes all the time, and as they work fine until they stop doing it, they don't see that urgency to have a data related people. But hopefully in the longer run, they will ask for more. Because I see like nowadays there is many companies asking for data scientists. Do you think that demand of people, of the data scientists, are fulfilled from us, the students, or people who want to get into data science?
Yeah, it's from my experience of working with these companies who are sort of in the middle of that gamut that I explained, where they know they need a data person, but they haven't like spent the time and money to hire somebody yet. From working with those people, I now know that it's actually really hard to hire data professionals, especially if you don't have one in place and you don't have the data infrastructure in place. I was the first data science hire at my company, but I was very fortunate because Narrator is a data company, and all of my coworkers, they came from very mature, they came from companies that had very mature data operations. And so in my company, our data culture is very well thought out. And I think that working under my manager, who is the head of data, like we know exactly what we want for our data team. But for other companies where it's like, I don't know, somebody who has nothing to do with data and they think they know they need some kind of data team or a data person at least. I think that there are a couple steps between knowing you need one versus knowing how you're going to best use that team. And if you're somewhere in the middle where you don't exactly know what a data team is good for, and you just want one because it sounds cool and techy, it's really hard to hire people. And like if you are a newbie to data science and you like end up getting brought into that, where you're brought into a company that only wants to hire data people because it sounds cool, that's like really unfortunate, because you are not going to learn the best practices, and you're going to be brought in to do a lot of like cleaning up of things that is not data science at all. And it's like the problem stems from people not being data literate and not knowing why exactly they need to have a mature data infrastructure and data people, and only doing it because it sounds cool.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, so we're getting to the end now. I saw that you have also a course on the LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
Because I guess that you have many goals, because I see that you are really present in LinkedIn and you want to do so many things. So in this course of the LinkedIn, what are you teaching?
Yeah, wow, I can't believe there are almost 2,300 learners on that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So this course is
September.
Go ahead.
So on September it was released this year. Wow.
Yes. It was, like I said, I got this opportunity from the same viral LinkedIn post that got my current manager to reach out to me.
You're gonna have to put a picture in the room for that post.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, this is my first course, and I'm currently working on a second course. And in what's today, Wednesday? In 4 days, I fly to California to go to the LinkedIn Learning Studios to film my second course.
Nice. And this course is about knowing the differences between Python, R, and SQL.
Yes, that's right.
Good, good. And this different point of view has related to other courses?
Sorry, what's the question?
Sorry, the translation of the Spanish sometimes.
All good.
This course, how different is from others who teach Python, R, or SQL?
Oh, I see. I gotcha. Yeah, I think this is fundamentally different because it's a course that takes a look at each of these tools in the context of the other tools. So you're not just learning one in isolation, and the course is not trying to be like, oh, this is why SQL is great and you should only use SQL, or this is why Python is great and you should only use Python. I'm explaining Python in the context of how you would use it versus R or with R, and how you would use it with SQL or versus SQL. Because in the real world, it's, at least for my projects, it's been pretty rare that I just use one.
Yeah.
And so in the real world, you want to know, if you're preparing to go into being a data analyst or data scientist, it's important for you to know how you use them together, or why you would use one versus the other. And that's what this course really sets out to do. And I think when you understand the pros and cons of each and how they compare to each other, is how you can make a decision for whether you want to use one tool versus the other. You'll always hear these debates about, oh, Python versus R, which one is better? But I mean, how are you going to know that unless you know the pros and cons of each,
Yeah, totally. Because in my case, when I first worked with SQL, I thought that SQL, I could use it just on SQL. But then later, sometime I did that exercise for SQL in Python with a library SQLite 3. And I thought, oh, wow, I can do SQL also in Python. So it's like when you do this, it's mind blowing. And then you start questioning everything. Okay, so now I have learned SQL and now Python, and they are now all together. So having this knowledge previously, I think that really saves a lot of time.
Yeah, I remember the first time I was able to use SQL in both Python and R, and I was like, wait, this is so cool. Why didn't I do this from the beginning? But then I was like, oh, I had to learn each of these tools separately to be able to combine them. And it was really cool when I was able to.
Good. So thanks a lot that you do this course to have the perspective clear from the very beginning.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, so people here, do you want to make some questions? Feel free, engage, open, if you want.
Where would the questions pop up? Because I'm on, would it come up in the chat?
In the chat, maybe.
Oh, got it.
But I don't know if people want to talk or not. Also, I don't know if in the LinkedIn, the link was okay. But anyway, if people don't ask anything, we can leave it here. Let's wait 1 second. Yeah, because theoretically, I tried to put it on live streaming to the LinkedIn, but some people told me that it wasn't working.
Interesting.
The first videos are the trials.
Yeah. Oh, wait, so this is the first?
Well, it's the third one, but
okay.
It's the first that I have done in live streaming.
Oh, got it. Wow, no pressure.
More to come. Yeah. Okay, so given that we don't have any questions, we can leave it here. It's been totally a pleasure, and thanks for all of the conversation. I think it was really insightful for anyone who wants to get into data science and also understand what they can expect when they get into the field. So thanks a lot for that.
Of course, and we did end up getting one comment from Claudio, and thank you, Claudio. So
yes. That's true.
It was a pleasure chatting with you, Jesus, and to your listeners. And thank you so much for welcoming me.
Pleasure. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.